You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome, everyone, to the 9th episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we dig deep with cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers in order to give you the 1% you need to keep pushing forward. Today is October the 2nd, so I want to start off this week's episode with a breast cancer survivor since it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I can think of no better guest than a longtime friend of mine, Whitney. Whitney and I grew up in the same small town of Griffin, Georgia, and our lives have changed dramatically since we first met. As you listen to today's episode, I want you to remember these 3 words. Eat dessert first. As you listen to today's episode in its entirety, you will know exactly what I mean by that statement. So sit back and relax and enjoy this week's episode of the 1% Podcast.
Whitney was diagnosed with HER2-positive stage 3 breast cancer 1 week after her 30th birthday. She's currently Director of Business Development at a behavioral health hospital in South Carolina. Whitney, how's it going today?
Going great. How are you?
Doing good.
Good.
So a little bit of background. Whitney and I have known each other for how many years? 10, 11, 12, something like that?
I think I was 16 when we met.
We'll go back and tell everybody why I know a 16-year-old back in the day. We actually we used to work at a restaurant together.
Yes.
Back when you were in high school and I had just started college. So.
Mm-hmm. And I was friends with your brother.
True. So there you go. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. Just knowing you and knowing a lot about you and what you've been through over the past couple of years. I think it's, pre-cancer Whitney is probably one of the most amazing people that I know. And I'm glad to call you a friend. And then, I didn't think it'd get any better than like post-cancer Whitney, is even better. She's full of a different type of motivation and intentionality in her life. And she's got a lot of great things going for her. She got a phenomenal husband and a nice new blonde streak in the front of her hair from, thanks chemo for that, right? But yeah, so I'm excited to talk to you, excited to chat with you about everything. Tell the listeners today why you think it's important for you to share your story with them.
Well, first of all, thanks for the intro. I love all the nice compliments. I would say for me, I was 30 when I was diagnosed, and the only person that I knew as young as I was being diagnosed was you. So I didn't know anyone else in my life that had had cancer at that young of age, and I just knew I had a lot to say about it because I was mad, angry, upset, why me, that kind of stuff. So as I figured that all out, it turned into a great inconvenient experience, I'd say. So,
is there one thing specifically about your story that you want people to take away?
If I could say anything, it would be educate yourself. My husband and I went above and beyond in educating ourselves. We read books, we looked up studies, we looked into diets, we did all these things, and my anxiety about the whole thing really was minimized because of how educated we were about it all. Because it's a lot to take in, especially at 30 when this was not in my plan. So we had to really take a step back and look at what we were going to do.
No, I absolutely agree. When I was first diagnosed, I had all these things I wanted to do in life, and it just, all your priorities completely change. And you guys had just been married for 2 months prior to your diagnosis, right?
Right. Best newlywed wedding gift ever, right?
You didn't get a chance to go on your honeymoon yet, and all of a sudden you're diagnosed with cancer. Well, tell us a little bit about your life prior to your diagnosis. I know you had graduated from college. You were, had big plans. You had just gotten married. Tell us a little bit about your overall life.
So I was still working at the same place I work now. I was as a therapist doing crisis assessments, and was busy planning a wedding and having a good time. I was pretty healthy, I would say. I kind of did a big shift in my eating and kind of overall perspective on health over the last, 6 years or so. So I would like to say I was pretty healthy, working out, eating right, all that kind of stuff. Great family on both sides. Which not many people can say that about their family that they marry into, but truly both sides are great. So really, not a whole lot to complain about pre-cancer.
Did you have any certain life events that happened prior to you getting your diagnosis that maybe were difficult, but did you know at the time were, I guess, preparing you for something to happen to yourself?
Probably the death of my father. He died of a glioblastoma in 2015. And so we were dealing with that for about 2 years, from diagnosis to death, about 2 years. So that whole thing, that was a big shift for me, going through all of that.
So your overall quality of life at that point, you said you had started eating healthy, you were just changing a couple things in your life. Walk us up to that moment where you were, what led you to actually go into the doctor to get checked out for the first time?
So I actually had my annual exam in January, and he just was very apprehensive about me not doing extra stuff. So he recommended that I have a mammogram. So then I went and got a mammogram. I went in there, got the mammogram done, and they take you to this other room. And I was like, why am I being brought into this room? And so another doctor comes out and says, we want to take a few more photos. We want a full picture. And I was like, something's up. So I go back in and take a few more pictures. And they say, Miss O'Connor, you need a biopsy. So we're going to set you up with that. So like a week later, I did a biopsy. They took samples. Meanwhile, I did not tell anyone about any of this. I know that's not, probably the best idea, but I didn't even tell my new husband because I wanted to know what I was dealing with before I even brought it up. So finally got around to telling Chase about what was going on. And just basically told him, hey, we're waiting on some news, I'm sure it's fine. No big deal, that kind of thing. So the very next day, it was like 5:20 in the afternoon on February 24th. I'll never forget that day. And I was outside and I got a phone call from one of the doctors, and they were just like, unfortunately, Miss O'Connor, your biopsy came positive for cancer. And I was just like, okay. all right, so what's next? What's the plan? And she said a bunch of big fancy words that I didn't understand. She told me a lot of information that I did not comprehend at all, and told me that she was going to call me back in a few days to let me know what kind of cancer, what's the prognosis, what stage I'm at, and all that good stuff. So I get off the phone with her, and I'm outside, and I don't even know how long I'm out there, to be honest with you. Chase gets home, and he comes in the backyard. My heart just drops. I'm like, oh my God, I got to tell him this terrible news, So he just comes outside, and he just sees tears running down my face, and he knew exactly what was happening. And we just sat outside for, again, I don't even know how long, and just held each other and just, cried.
So what was one of the first things that he said to you when he found out?
The first thing he said, I think, it's kind of a blur, but he said, that we're going to get through this, right? And I said, I think so.
Did it make you feel any better at the time?
Yeah, I think so. It would have been really scary to go through it by myself. But a part of me felt like I failed him already, because we had just gotten married. And I'm like, wow, you just married this broken, sickly wife that's about to have to go through all this. She's going to lose her hair, like, all this stuff. And so some of those kind of negative thoughts were in my head. But I never, ever, ever, ever felt like he felt that way, for sure.
So you find out over the phone that you got cancer,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of impersonal already. When you go to the doctor and you start hearing all the different types of, treatments and your diagnosis, what kind of fears and anxieties did you have at that moment when it all kind of sunk in?
Well, obviously chemotherapy is not, on anyone's list of things to do. So I was kind of freaked out about the idea of doing that. And quite honestly, I had, read and watched all these documentaries over the years about people healing themselves and all these kind of radical ideas. And ultimately, I just knew I had to suck it up and do this whole chemotherapy thing, which I knew it was going to be hard, but I knew it was also going to be kind of like a mind game too. So I kind of already had that put together before I got started.
Did you relate any of the news that you were getting about yourself to any of that kind of relate back to some of the stuff that you had heard, like when your dad found out your dad had cancer as well?
Yeah, he towards the end, he lost the ability to talk. So we really had to guess what he was feeling and what he was feeling like. And that was really difficult. And so he would never, ever tell. He's kind of stubborn, but I don't have any of those characteristics about myself at all. But he sucked it up, and he just, he did whatever we asked him to do. And it was really hard for him. And I knew it was hard because I could just see it in his eyes, but he never acted as though it was hard. So I knew if he could do it, I could do it too.
Tell everybody what, you said you were HER2 positive. Describe your diagnosis and the treatment plan that you had going forward.
So HER2 positive, it's not the best type of breast cancer you can have, but it's not the worst, but it's not the best either. So that right there, freaky for me to think about. But I will say with my stage, like, you hear stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, my doctors, it took them a really, really long time to even go into that kind of conversation with me because they were so confident about my treatment plan. So with HER2 positive, there's these newer drugs out there called Perjeta and Herceptin, and those are part of your chemo regimen. And so in conjunction with chemo, you get those two things for 6 months. After 6 months, I had surgery a month later. I had a double mastectomy and then had another surgery a few months after that to finish the reconstruction part where they put the implants in. Then I had to finish up my infusions with Herceptin and Perjeta, then started taking tamoxifen, which is what I'm taking now. And that's like a maintenance type drug.
Do you know how long you have to be on that?
I first heard 5 years and then I heard 10. So I'm just gonna play it by ear.
So I remember when I first found out the news about you, and it was crazy for me because I got to thinking, like, I don't know, I'm not a huge crier, but I don't know why, but that just broke my heart so bad when I heard about you, because I know you, I know how full of life you are, and just the thought of, that being taken away from you, just, I don't know why. Like, I guess, I don't know, but it really like kind of did something to me. And then I remember us having, we had like a long conversation. I was out shopping with my wife one day, and like, I think that's the first time we actually got a chance to talk. And we probably talked on the phone about 45 minutes where you were describing everything to me and like what was going on and, all of those things. And I just remember getting off the phone with you and knowing, I was 31 when I was diagnosed, and here you are at 30, right? So like knowing that the rest of your life could be dramatically different because of a diagnosis. And, I think one of those things, because, because we are such close friends, like, I guess I was kind of sharing the burden with you a little bit because I knew exactly what you were going to go through. And it was just so heavy on me. And now I thought about your husband, like being brand new, and we always hear for better, for worse, sickness and health. And boom, here's the sickness a couple of months afterwards and the worst, probably just going into your marriage. And all of that just really bothered me. And not that I knew you couldn't make it through or push through, because I know, you say you're not stubborn, but I kind of know opposite. But just knowing who you were, I hated the other experience that, but I was confident that if it was up to you, you were going to do everything you could to get through there. And just one of the questions I ask people is, what's the best and worst advice people have gotten from you? And I remember all the crappy advice that I got, and everybody telling me how many people they knew died that had the same cancer I had and stuff. But I remember just really wanting to treat you the way that I wanted to be treated at that point. And then knowing who you are personally and knowing that you just needed some encouragement, and you already had your mind made up at that point that you were going to keep going. And, there's nothing I could say to make things better for you at that moment, but you were on the right track. You just needed to be reminded. And so I think that lots of times in life, we either need to be taught or reminded something. And, you didn't need to be taught how to be positive and all those things, because that's just who you are naturally. You just needed occasional reminders of the good things that you had to look forward to and stuff. So I don't know if I've ever shared that with you, but
you haven't.
All right, get all deep on here.
I know. Let's get deep.
The world to listen to, right? But no, I remember thinking that about you, and so I guess I just wanted to share that with you as well too. But back to you and your story, when you laugh when I said like the advice. What kind of advice? What's the best and worst advice you've gotten so far, being 30 and having to experience this?
I feel like one of the best pieces of advice was something that you told me, and it was just take one day at a time. And I didn't really realize what that meant until I started treatment. And I was like, you know, when you wake up and you feel like you got ran over by a truck and you look awful and you just, you know, you can't eat and you can't really even sleep because you're just miserable. I mean, that's really what you meant. Like, take one day at a time. Like, just get through that one day and the next day will be better and better and better. So I really like held on to that. And even I told Chase that you told me that, and Chase told me that all the time, like, just one more day, boo, just one more day type thing. The worst advice, or not really advice, but like people just say some crazy things. And I got that, the same thing you got, like, oh, my grandmother had that and she died. I hope you're okay. And I'm like, well, yeah, me too. You know? And the thing is too, is that cancer has such a bad reputation. And, you know, 20, 30 years ago, I would have been a goner probably. I mean, they don't have the things that they have. Well, they didn't have it back then, what they have now. So, you know, people who are still attached to that type of cancer and that idea of cancer, you know, that everyone around them dies once they get it, they automatically look at you and they just immediately get like depressed, and they're just, you know, like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this. Oh my gosh. Oh, and you're only 30. Oh gosh, you just got married. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, you're not telling me anything I don't already know, man. Like, let's keep it moving. But that happened, you know, sometimes. Yeah, I'd say that's really it. I really had a good team of support, and I was really lucky and grateful to have that, because, you know, not every patient that I was in the chemo room with had that. So I was really grateful for that.
You told me a story one time about some of the things that your husband would do when you were sick, because, you know, you had those days where it's like, you know, I'm going to be miserable being miserable, right? Where you don't eat, you don't sleep, and then it comes time for everybody else to go to sleep and you're still not sleeping. And then, you know, life is completely opposite. Tell everybody some of the things that your husband would do to kind of make your life a little bit better as you went through your treatment.
Well, first of all, Chase decided that he was going to become a professor in breast cancer. Like, he read so many books. He joined like support blogs and stuff online. He looked up ways to ease my symptoms. He would make me this smoothie every morning. It was like a ginger orange smoothie, and it was so good. And I would feel like $1,000,000 afterwards. He knew that he's extremely introverted and I'm very extroverted. So he knew that me being cooped up in a house was not going to fly. Like, it just wasn't going to be good for my healing at all. So he would arrange for people to come, like my best friends to come visit, stay with me for a few days. He was just a huge advocate for me. Like, he challenged the doctors and he asked questions. And a lot of people are so blindsided by the news that they don't, you know, they take everything at face value. And we didn't do that. He really, really took a stand and really wanted to do right by me. He couldn't do it for me. And that's one thing that he's real big into MMA and all that kind of stuff. And he likes to fight and train, and just like you do. But he told me one time, he's like, Whitney, I can't do this for you. I can't do the chemo. I can't take any of these shots. I can't do any of it. But what I can do is try to know exactly what's happening and educate myself on what this all is about. And that's the only thing I can do. So that's what I'm going to do. It's my way of fighting. And I was like, okay, well, you do you, boo.
I know you told me he used to follow you around the house like every step of the way.
Oh, I forgot about that. He did. Oh my gosh. So before chemo, he knew that I wasn't gonna be able to like wash clothes and do certain things. And he's kind of, he's not, the most present human being. So, even though it looks as though he does notice me doing a lot of stuff or whatever, he doesn't know how to do it himself. So he followed me around one day and asked me how to operate our washing machine and dryer, and just asked me where certain things were, and around the house, and hey, when this bill comes in, what account do you use to pay for it, just stuff like that, because he didn't want me to worry about any of that stuff, which was difficult. I'm kind of a control freak, and so it was difficult for me to have that happen at first. But when I was sick, I was like, you go on ahead, you do all the laundry you want, because I'm not doing it.
No, what I think's amazing is, in our life, like God puts people in our life for different reasons, right? So, I mean, all these years ago, 14, 15 years ago, who would have known that you and I would both be sharing this moment, like as far as like why we became friends. And then later in life, we would experience something very similar. And the very fact that he put like your husband in your life, I think is so great, because, you guys love each other, you got married, all those things. But I mean, look what type of person that you ended up with that was able to take care of you in a way that he had to learn, but in a way that totally took care of a lot of things that you normally did. So I think that's a huge blessing to think about. Obviously, you already know that a million times.
Oh yeah, he's my hero. I tell him all the time. I'm like, listen, hey, when you figure out that you're a much better person than I am, like, please just don't leave me. Just stick it out. Stick around.
So as you go through treatment moments, you have moments where you're not as strong, where your faith gets tested, you physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially, all those moments where you really get tested. And, it seems like, especially if you're intentional and looking, when those moments happen, someone or something, I feel like God puts those things in our life to remind us, hey, I'm in control, for number one. And number two, it's like you're going to get through it. Did you have any kind of moments where maybe you doubted your doctors, or you were just miserable, or any of those specific moments, or maybe a collection of moments where you might have known that you were sick and you couldn't predict the outcome, but you knew that you weren't going to give up, and you were going to keep fighting?
Because we went through such a hard time with my dad, I didn't give myself the option to not do what I needed to do, because of my family, really. I couldn't believe, actually, that my family had to do this whole cancer thing again, right after we just got finished dealing with my dad. So now, his daughter, my mother, has to go through, I have to tell her all this stuff again, which, when I'm looking back through my entire journey, one of the worst and most anxiety filled moments I had was going to tell my mother and going to tell my brother and sister-in-law, hey, guess what? We get to do this whole cancer thing again. I mean, it was awful. Real bad. So that was worse than any chemo day I ever had. So I felt like that whole experience, I didn't want them to be sad. I didn't want them to, feel like I was going to die. And so I just really try to suck it up and be a trooper. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I'm gonna. I really did not complain that much. I tried not to, because if I complained, or if I, was like, oh, I feel like crap today or whatever, then immediately my husband would get anxious and worried, or my mom would be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I just wasn't going to have that. So I really truly sucked it up so that everything will be okay and we can get back to the way we were and not have to deal with this thing.
Looking back, was there ever anything that maybe something that you can't really explain, but just those moments or a feeling that you were going to be okay and make it through this?
Yes, it was always on day 4 or 5, really, because I went through 6 rounds of chemo, and I usually didn't feel crappy until the 2nd or 3rd day. So maybe it was the 5th day. Like the 5th or 6th day, when I was starting to feel life back into me, like I was so proud of my body, for one, like going through all that stuff and, seeing the other side. Chase actually has videos of me on day 6. Just he caught me one time. I got up from bed. He was already fixing breakfast, and I just was in the room and I was just dancing with my dog. And he was like, oh my God, yesterday she was on her deathbed and today she's dancing. Hallelujah. We're out of the woods for this round. So on those days, I'd be like, whoo, wow. I can totally do this. Like, yeah, it's hard. It sucks. It's not my, favorite thing to go through, but hey, I can endure a few days of this and come back out.
Did you have some kind of personal motivation that helped push you through?
I would read like certain blogs of women that were kind of going through the same thing, like a couple of books, like survival guides and stuff like that I would read. Again, my family was like a huge, huge motivating factor, because I just didn't want to die on them, and I didn't want to let them down. And I wanted to just,
So now that you've finished up a majority of your treatment and you're just on your maintenance dose, what has your life been like since then? And when I ask you that, I mean, like from a perspective standpoint, has your perception changed on anything, or like how you view your life or how you see each day?
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's not all roses and daisies, but I will say things that I used to get upset about are just so silly to me now. I'm definitely way more present than I've ever been, like just really being in the moment. I know that's kind of cliche, but it's just so true. Just really trying to, always have a good time and just do something fun and take care of myself. Now, on the flip side, being a cancer survivor is a great thing. It's a good thing to be proud of and all that, but there are residual things that are really frustrating for me. And so, I have times where I get depressed or anxious and, I want to just kind of shut down, but I only allow myself to do that for like a day. And then I'm like, all right, Whitney, you can have your pity party for a day. And then tomorrow you're going to get back on the horse. And that's really what I do. Cause that happens probably like maybe once a month. I do have lymphedema, and that's a common thing for breast cancer survivors. If they have lymph nodes taken out, it's a very common thing for them to get. I didn't fully understand what lymphedema was until like later on. And I got, upset about it once I learned what it was. And then I can't do some of the things that I want to do, and, can't work out the way I want to work out. I can't have any kind of trauma, not even a mosquito bite to that arm. And so that's kind of inconvenient. I eat dessert first. That's my motto. That's one of my mottos. And I tell people that all the time, is to eat dessert first occasionally. And what I mean is don't, say I want to do this, that, and the other and dream about it. Like, go do it if you want to do it. Celebrate for no reason. We save all these things. Like, we save like champagne and we save this outfit and we save that book for whatever. And the time is now, I think. And so that's really how we live now.
No, it's amazing to hear you say that. Just like your approach to life is eat dessert first, enjoy the good things first. So I think that's such a profound piece of advice coming from you.
I think I'll make bumper stickers.
There you go. So one of the questions I had for you was what piece of advice do you have for people that are maybe your age that first find out they have cancer?
I would definitely say it's not your fault. For whatever reason, our bodies, got this illness, and our cells went out of whack for a little bit, and it's created this problem. But it doesn't have to be a negative experience. And I know that's so difficult for some people to understand, but I would encourage people to like celebrate different things. For example, I had a boob voyage. Have you ever heard of a boob voyage?
I don't think so.
A boob voyage is a gathering. I kind of made some stuff up to go along with it, but I had all my girlfriends come to a good friend of mine's lake house, and I was having a mastectomy that Monday after that weekend. So what my friends did and what I'd planned was for us all get together and just celebrate life. And what we did is we burned all my bras in a fire. And because I wasn't going to be able to wear them anymore. So, it was just kind of like a release. Some of those bras I've had like sports bras since high school, which is really gross, but it's true.
Time to burn them anyways, right?
I mean, yeah. So, we burned my bras and we just had fun. And going into surgery it was just so much better. Like I was just at ease. I had a good time with my friends. We were making memories. So I just chose to do that rather than spend the weekend like being afraid of having surgery on Monday. So I would encourage people to do stuff like that, and celebrate themselves and try to figure out a way to be positive and get through it.
Your perception is different than a lot of other people's. And that's why I wanted to be able to share your story with a lot of people. Like, a lot of times when we hear cancer, we hear death, for some reason they mean the same thing to a lot of people. So I know that for me, like that wasn't the first thing I thought of, but eventually after you've Googled yourself to sleep at night enough, you start picking up, when am I going to die? You want to put a timetable in, because if for some reason it makes you feel better, right? Even though you don't really know. But your perception on everything that you've said so far is, yeah, it sucks. I got it at a terrible time, but I'm not going to look at it like that. I'm going to celebrate. It's going to be hard. I'm going to get through it. Even though someone in my family has passed away from cancer, even like pretty close to when you were diagnosed, you didn't let that hold you down or change your perception like immediately. Because a lot of people will go back to the tape recorder they have playing in their head where,
right.
Oh, okay, this person's got it and they die and everything else. That's why people tell you that out of the blue. But like you didn't go back to that. So that wasn't on the message running through your head. Yours was, hey, he pushed hard through this. I'm going to do the exact same. And I'm going to have a good time doing this, which in itself is a huge victory, I think, because cancer, like surviving cancer or either going through treatments, it's the worst physical thing you probably had happen in your life, but the way you chose to go through it is a lot healthier than maybe some other people, choose to go through it. And I think not everyone knows how to react, and everyone's, appropriate in acting whatever makes them feel better, I think, in a lot of ways. But the way you chose to go through it, I think, can give a lot of people hope that, hey, listen, just because you get a bad diagnosis doesn't mean you have to suffer any more than you have to as you go through this. You can be positive. You can have fun little events to really kind of get you, prepared for the surgery coming up or something along those lines, and really take that and coast on into the surgery instead of staying up all night worrying about what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because, again, it's not all roses and daisies, but I don't know. I feel like I'm just programmed, I guess, to be this way. It's a blessing. It can be a curse too, but I really, really tried to I really just didn't want this to be the end, like I just did not. I'm like, dude, I have so many cool things I want to do and see. I just wanted to beat it, really. And instead of spending my time asking questions of, why is this happening? Like, why did this happen to me? And all that kind of stuff. I did do that. But when you sit in it, like, what does that accomplish? And so, that's just what I had to do, really. It's really given me a new, I've always loved life, but to the extent that I love it now is really far beyond what I could have imagined for myself. If it took cancer to accomplish all the cool things I'm going to do, then so be it.
Right. I feel the exact same way. Like if this is what it took for me to enjoy my life the way I enjoy it now, then okay, I'll just go with it. It's not for everybody. Everybody doesn't have to get cancer to enjoy life, but if that's what it took for me personally, and also too, I think because you are younger and people look at you, typically as having a lot more years to live, I think it gives a lot of people hope when they see, people like us that have went through it. And I remember people saying a lot of times to me, like, I can't even tell, and I'm like dying inside over here. But like, I feel like I look like just awful, right? But people can look at that and say, okay, maybe if this guy can go through or this girl can go through it this way and make a conscious choice to be as healthy as you can and to be as normal as you can going through it, then it says a lot. I have a neighbor actually who's diagnosed with the exact same cancer I had. Like,
oh my gosh, really?
Right? Just a couple months ago. And so I'm giving him all the advice I wish someone would have given me. And because I saw him going through the steps, I saw him going through the denial, the whole grief cycle, right? We all go through that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the faster you can get through that, the better. So, you do have it, and then you get scared and you get mad and you go, okay, and you keep moving through the process. Where it gets harder is when you get stuck. And like anything else, any kind of traumatic event, if you get stuck in a grief cycle somewhere, you're gonna need some help to get out, right?
Sure.
So that's not something that I want him to get stuck at this point or whatever. But, your story just dramatically impacts. I saw all the love that you got, through social media, all the encouraging moments that you had a chance to go back and look at. And it's weird when a couple of years from now, I go back and look every now and then, like whenever, I don't know, somehow it's 2:00 in the morning and you're Googling all like the weird stuff, like how tall is Jesus, when you should be asleep. Right. But, and you go back and you find yourself looking at your old like social media posts, or even now when you get reminders like 5 years ago, this is something.
Oh yeah, I love those. Time hop.
Yeah, time hops. But when you go back and you see all the comments, you're like, whoa, it's almost like, was that really me? It's sometimes the way I think about it. Like, was that really me? And you go back and look in pictures, you're like, yeah, that was me. And this is what I was feeling at that moment. And, you're going to have those moments in the future where you get reminded of all the people that were there for you and all the good things that happened in the past. It really kind of pushes you through the moments and stuff. So I know you're a young survivor as far as just recently coming out of all this. So you got a tremendous amount of work to do. And as your elder, I'm going to challenge you. Yeah. Sit up straight and listen. So I'm going to challenge you to do something with your story that's unique and authentic to you and your personality, because you do have a very outgoing, positively reckless personality when it comes down to sharing your story, sharing who you are, and people listening to you, because you're just full of energy. And imagine meeting people who were going through their cancer battle maybe a different way than you did. And you came in and you can actually teach them. Like I said earlier, people either need to be taught or reminded. And you could come in and teach people how to, change their way of thinking. You're already certified to do that as far as your profession goes. Like, you imagine you going in and training people and teaching people how to have a different perception on their cancer diagnosis and stuff in the future. So you're going to challenge you.
Don't give any spoilers, Truett. I've already got some things in my bag. This Boobie Queen is going to go global, I'm telling you.
All right, well, write it down. I'm going to challenge. I'm purposely saying this out loud so everybody can hear it in the future, and you can't get away from it now. So surprise. But there you go. But but you do have a tremendous calling on your life, and I feel like everybody's responsible for different things, but everybody is responsible for what they have, and whether it's a lot or little, or a cancer diagnosis and story or not, like, you're responsible for what you have. And so use your story, use everything, every great quality that you have about you and all your talents to go out there and impact a lot of people. And that's not something that I would say to most people, but keep you on the right track and keep pushing you along the way, because life will get in the way. You'll get too busy. Things will come up and try to steal this away from you. And just know every time something like that happens, that's even more of a confirmation that you're on the right track. Trust me on that. So I didn't get all this gray hair for not having wisdom. So there you go.
That's chemo hair.
Yeah, there you go. But so I like to end the podcast with a couple of questions about you, since to celebrate you and who you are. And I'm sure you won't have a hard time with this, but let's talk about a couple of different things so people can get to know you a little bit. Tell us a couple of things that motivate you each day, or that motivated you as you were going through your treatment.
My husband, and I had this sense of, like, this intuitive sense of purpose that was surfacing for me. Like, I knew as I was going through this, I was like, wow, like, my role in this whole life thing is so much bigger than what I think it is. And, whatever God is showing me right now is so clear, that that's what I need to be doing.
Recommend some supplements or products or websites or something for our listeners that you feel like that would help them as they go through treatment. So,
I would highly recommend every morning taking an Epsom salt bath. I was very achy and sore through chemo, and that's the first thing I did when I woke up. I would crawl to the bathtub and get in the bath. Took a lot of vitamin C. I still take a lot of vitamin C. I don't think you can take too much vitamin C, in my opinion. I'm really into essential oils, and I make little lotions for different things. Like, for instance, lymphedema, I have a lotion that helps with inflammation. And so when, I do massages and things on my arm that I have to do, that's, helpful.
You make those oils yourself, or do you purchase them?
No, I purchase them. Purchase the oils, and then I combine it with coconut oil, and that's all I use.
Send me a link to that, and I'll put that in the show notes so people can check out those oils as well.
Okay.
So what's the last book you've read?
Okay, I just read Pencils of Promise. Have you heard of it or read it?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you got to read it. It's about this guy named Adam Braun. He was a big executive at Bain & Company, which is a huge consulting firm, making six figures, an obscene amount of money. and he went abroad with a friend, and he went to different villages and noticed that they didn't have any schools for the kids. And so he, long story short, he ended up like creating a campaign to raise money to build schools in these villages. And so now Pencils of Promise is like a huge nonprofit organization and does all kinds of cool things. And so I read that a couple weeks ago, and it was really good.
Do you have any favorite recipes or foods that you want to recommend?
Anything with ginger in it. Ginger tea, ginger ale, ginger snaps, crystallized ginger. I had a lot of ginger, and I had a lot of smoothies. Smoothies are a really good way to get a lot of nutrients when you're not feeling like eating. I mean, you're pumping a bunch of toxins in your body. So, I really tried to, do right by my body and give it some adequate nourishment. And I try not to go crazy on the biscuits and, steak.
And what are 3 items on your bucket and life list? So we've made this list in the past.
Oh my gosh, we did.
I feel like I don't know where it's at, but I want to say that we made this list last time. You brought me like chicken noodle soup whenever I was going through cancer.
Did.
So how crazy, right? I got to find
Yes,
out.
you were like finishing up chemo, I think. Like you were on the upswing of it. And I had come over and made some soup, and I brought you a book called the Cancer Fighting Kitchen. That's what it was. And we decided to make a bucket list. That was fun. I don't remember what was on mine, but
I think I still have your crock pot here.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Yeah. So
enjoy.
There you go. There. What are a couple items that you have on your bucket or life list that you want to accomplish going forward?
Yeah. So I don't even like to call it a bucket list anymore, because I feel like when people think of bucket lists, they think of like dreams, and they're often unattainable, and they're just kind of things they wish they could do one day and all this kind of stuff. I have a to-do list now. So learn Spanish. That's on my to-do list. I would love to go to a World Cup. That'd be fun. I really want to start my own business. I really do. So those are the some of the many things on my to-do list.
All sound attainable. I'm gonna find this list and I'll send it to you. It's probably in a drawer somewhere in my kitchen or something.
Gosh, please. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story today. Again, it was so great to hear your perspective on getting cancer at a young age and all the things that you went through. Your eat dessert first mentality, I think, is something that can be duplicated. And, again, going from a routine mammogram to, cancer, and to chemo, and to, a double mastectomy, all those huge life events, and to have that kind of attitude that you have right now, I think is amazing. And, I love all of your ideas of your Beau Voyage and all the other things that you've been a part of since you were diagnosed, and the support and stuff that you have from your family and your friends, I think dramatically helps as well too. So thank you for sharing your story with everyone. I can only imagine the thousands of people that'll hear your story that will be dramatically impacted, and know that they're not alone if they get cancer.
Don't sell yourself short, Truett. You know that millions of people are going to listen to this podcast because you, my friend, are amazing. And I remember being alongside with you for a short period of time while you were going through cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could never do what he's doing. Like, could not do, any of it. So I'm so thankful that you're doing this podcast, and I'm so thankful that it's you that's doing it, because you're an inspiration to me, always have been since, we were younger. And I'm so proud of all the things that you've done and all the decisions that you've made. And you look at life so differently, just like I do now. And I'm loving all of this, loving it.
I'm glad you could be a part of it. You know, again, our lives were woven together so many years ago for a specific reason. So thank you again for sharing your story. And we're going to stay in touch with you. And
part two.
Part two, whenever you get all your stuff that you're selling and your Boobie Queen stuff everywhere and all that other stuff, we'll get that out there to everybody. Okay.
Thank you, bud.
Awesome. It was nice chatting with you, and we'll be in touch soon. Okay.
You too, bud. Love you.
Love you too.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.